What's love got to do with it? Got to do with it? What's love but a second-hand emotion? Up, Tina Turner, baby. It's a perfect lead-in for the series that we're doing, Love is in the Air. And of course, because we're on the cusp of Valentine's Day, right? So we've been talking about this story of Simon the Pharisee, who invited Jesus to come to his house. This is in Luke chapter 7. Jesus came to his house, and when Jesus sat down, there was a sinner woman who came, washed his feet with her tears, dried them with her hair, kissed his feet, anointed them with oil. And then Simon the Pharisee, the host, gets cranky, and Jesus has a parable that he speaks to him. And he says, which one who loves more, the one who's forgiven more or the one who's forgiven less because of the debt? And Simon says, well, the one who loves more, was forgiven more, loves more. And Jesus says, this woman, and he starts going into this description of what she's done and contrasts it with what Simon has not done. And then he says her sins are forgiven. She has loved much. And he says, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. So interesting, because in this story, there's several people. And we talked about alluding last week into this week, who are the people in the story? Because I think that each of us potentially might be able to find ourselves in each of these individuals. And when we think about it, Simon is the person who invites Jesus. He's highly religious. He's very, very legalistic, but he dots his I's and he crosses his T's. He has the best motive in his heart, maybe, or at least that's what he thinks in his mind. He's upstanding, he's upright, he's righteous, he's all these things and holy and pure. And so he invites Jesus to his house. So Simon is the key figure, the instigator for the whole story. Jesus comes, shows up at Simon's house. Remember that Simon also has his friends with him who are sitting around the table, likely other religious leaders, particularly when we think about their reaction. And then we have the outlier, the one who blows the whole thing up, is the woman who is very sinful. And in this story, I would say there's four main groups or characters. Simon, who is highly religious, very pure. He does everything exactly right. He dots the I's and crosses the T's. At least that's what he thinks in his mind. And then we have Jesus, who kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. He doesn't do what the religious people expect or the conventional, traditional religious norms. He doesn't do all that stuff. He is a little bit more loosey-goosey, if you will. Then you have Simon's friends. And likely, like I said, they are also pious religious leaders. And we tend to invite people and hang around people with whom we have a lot of commonality. We don't often want to associate with those who are different than us. So the fact that the sinner woman shows up and crashes this party, this dinner party, is very, very informative. Because in the midst of all of this, it's interesting to watch the reactions of everybody. Simon's reaction, and it's all around the sinner woman. They're all kind of attentive to this sinner. She is the focal point because she's the outlier. She's the one that was uninvited. But the reactions of everybody express what's inside, the internal. And so Simon's reaction to the sinner woman, he thinks to himself, if Jesus was a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. This communicates and expresses internally that his mindset is one of judgment, exclusion, superiority, and what's the right word? Where you're better than everybody else. That's his mentality. Jesus' expression, when the woman shows up and starts to wash his feet and all this, he doesn't recoil or pull back or get disgusted, revolted with this sinful woman. He doesn't do any of that. He lets her express the fullness of her love, the extravagant, over the top, genuine love that is being poured out expressed from her to him. And the fact that the woman shows up, this sinful woman shows up at Simon's house, in and of itself is astounding. If you're in her shoes, sandals, there's no way. Why would you go to a house where you know you're going to be rejected, repelled, looked down on, judged, excluded? Like there's this hostility towards you. Why would you show up? She showed up because of her extravagant love for Jesus. And our love for Jesus can take us into situations and circumstances and engagements with people where we're not always the most popular, the most celebrated, the most accepted. But our love for Jesus can compel us to go above and beyond what's natural, comfortable, familiar. You look at the people who are sitting at the table, the friends, the friends of Simon, the way they react. They're like, how is it? How can Jesus forgive? Because he says to the woman, your sins are forgiven. Who is this man that can forgive sins? Because they're all dialed in on the sin and being holy and pure and upstanding and righteous. And then you have the sinful woman and watching her. And I think when we consider this story, the question I have for you is, who am I? Who am I in this story? And right now, we'd like to say, well, I'd like to be Jesus, that's engaging and inclusive. But I think if we're honest, an honest look at ourselves, sometimes, and maybe we're the sinful woman, that we have all kinds of bad stuff. We're like, I don't deserve it, but I sure love Jesus. Maybe we're the spectators who are kind of like shocked. Or maybe we're Simon. But I think all of us can relate. And maybe at some stage in our life, we relate to each one of them. Stop! Halt! Oh my goodness, we have to take a pause to catch our breath and have a great joke. Wink, wink. Because we know these jokes are less than great. So here's your joke break. What did the cucumber say to the pickle? What did the cucumber say to the pickle? The cucumber said, you mean a great deal to me. Dill, get it? Like dill, pick, dill, cucumber. I know. It's really bad, but we're going to join the teaching now for something really good. But as we think about love for this month, let's reflect who God is to us and in us. If we're made in the image of God and God is love, then we're made in the image of love. And let us reflect love, extravagant love, going far above and beyond what would be conventional, traditional, acceptable, religious, or legalistic. Let's be overflowing in our extravagant and genuine expression of love. Next week, we're going to look at some contrasts. We're going to see what love is and what love is not. So I want you to watch next week, because not only are we identifying with the people this week, but next week we're going to look at the expression, the drastic contrasts on the expression of genuine love.